You're live, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening and welcome to this Strategy and Resources Committee meeting on Thursday, the 19th of March 2026. My name is Councillor John Driver and I am the chair of this committee. Members, we are streaming this meeting live as well as recording, and by being present in the meeting you are giving your consent to being recorded. During each item, please put your hand up to indicate if you wish to speak. I will then invite you at the appropriate time. Could I remind members to avoid approaching the top table, as this could create interference with the camera and live stream. Please note that the YouTube live stream sound recording is dependent on the correct use of the microphones. Therefore, can I ask that when invited to speak, you remember to turn on your microphone and turn it off when finished. Please reference a page or paragraph number when referring to the agenda papers and keep your contributions as clear and concise as possible. We do not have any fire alarm testing scheduled for today. However, we may have periodic fire alarms, and I remind members to ensure they sign in and out when entering the council offices. If you hear the fire alarm, please exit using either the two marked fire escape routes. Once at the building, please proceed to the designated muster point located on the grass verge by the police station entrance. Thank you. On to agenda item 2, then apologies for absence. Ms Bird, do we have apologies, please?
Yes, Chairman, thank you. Apologies were received from Councillor Burrell-Cook, Councillor Dodsley, Councillor Lagan and Councillor Siddle, and Councillor Stamford attending as a substitute for Councillor Lagan, and Councillor Hughes as a substitute for Councillor Siddle. Thank you, Chairman. Okay,
thank you very much. We move on then. Agenda item 3. It is recommended that the minutes of the meeting held on Thursday, the 29th of January 2026, found on pages 5 to 172, are approved as a true and accurate record. I so move. Do I have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Durham. Sorry. Can we agree those minutes by assent, members? Great. Thank you very much. We move on. Agenda item 4, declarations of interest. To disclose the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interests, either registrable interest and non-registrable interest relating to items of business on the agenda having regard to paragraph 9, appendix B of the Code of Conduct for members. Members are reminded that they are also required to disclose any such interest as soon as they become aware, should the need arise, throughout the meeting. Any declarations of interest? No. Okay, thank you. Agenda item 5, public participation. I can advise that we have not received any submissions from members of the public. So we move on to agenda item 6, project management, office and process involvement improvement framework. These can be found on pages 173 to 186. And I believe Ms Hughes, who's online, I think you're taking us through this. So over to you.
Okay. So in 2021, Maldon first signed up a strategy outlining our commitment to an approach to process improvement as an organisation. And then in 2024, this has been further updated and merged with our project management office delivery in the first PMO and improvement framework. That was due for renewal by 2027, but given recent internal transformation work, as well as learning that we've taken from the programme and a view of the impact of local government reorganisation, this version of the strategy further refines our approach to project management and process improvement as an organisation. So the framework itself is found at Appendix 1 from page 177 of your agenda pack. There's just a couple of points that I wanted to draw out just to give the committee a bit of reassurance around our approach. So from the bottom of page 179, we highlight the expectation around local government reform and that the team is expected to be a resource to mobilise on LGR delivery. In 26-27, as part of the internal Transforming Together programme, an additional post has been added to the team to ensure that business as usual improvements also continue alongside this. Page 181 sets out a clear expectation for corporate projects. Throughout the report, we highlight tools and templates that are in place to ensure consistency in our approach. and that's further supported, highlighted in page 183 by the internal governance around project management. So we've got a board for senior leadership team where projects are signed off, and a board of senior management team that monitor progress of project delivery. And on page 184, we highlight the main aims of process improvement. So those are there for you. And just the last point I wanted to make is that each year, as part of our statutory annual process, 2 member champions are appointed from both PGA committee and Overview and Scrutiny Committee, and that also helps us to feed into the improvement programme, and they have helped in informing this version of the strategy as well. So we'll continue this approach into 26-27. So members are asked to adopt the framework, but there's also a request there to make a referral across to Overview and Scrutiny Committee, just for awareness of the team as a resource, as it particularly links to the work that that committee does. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Ms Hughes. So the recommendations then can be found on page 173. There are 2 which have been just mentioned, but I'll read these out. So section 2, little 1, that the PMO, Project Management Office and Improvement Strategic Framework Appendix 1 be adopted, and little 2, that the framework is presented to Overview and Scrutiny Committee for awareness and to highlight the resource that can support improvements. Those are the recommendations. I so move. Do I have a second? Councillor Durham. Members, any questions? Councillor Fittock.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, I'm a member of the group that works with the officers on this, and I think they are doing a very good job. The report is well structured and sets out clearly what the objectives are. It's always difficult because I'd like to turn process improvement into financial benefit, but I don't think the budgets and the way that we set budgets in local government really help very much in doing so. But having said that, through the discussions I've had, I'm confident that their contribution is valuable, even though it is difficult in the way that we do things to put a financial value to it. So I would support it as well, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Stamp.
Yeah, thank you. Could I just have a little bit more detail on page 178 where it says stakeholder engagement, active communication involvement throughout the project life cycle? Can I just have it talked through what that exactly means for anybody who was on the meeting today, the Heritage and Culture meeting? Maybe would understand why I've asked that question.
Ms Hughes, maybe you can respond to that.
Yeah, well, each project defines what stakeholders, right from the start when we're signing off a project business case, we define the stakeholders and what the communications plan is for them. So I can't speak to a specific project without doing a bit of research, but it is our intention that any project has to set out who the stakeholders are, set out their plan for communication, and that is signed off as part of the signing off of a business case of a project, and then monitored as part of our monitoring of the project.
Okay, yes, Councillor Stamp, you can
Could you give me an example of possibly when this wouldn't happen and the risk to the council if it didn't?
Well, anything that goes through the project management office has that signed off. So I guess the risk would be if something hasn't come through that process, hasn't identified the stakeholders properly from my point of view. But like I said, I don't know the specific project that you're talking about. I just need to look into the detail.
Councillor Stamp, did you have something in mind specifically?
I do, but I'm hesitant to actually say it here at the moment, but I would like it noted that I've raised a query on that specific point, please, and then we'll take it offline. I'll go under P&C later.
So, okay, well, yeah, well, yes, okay, yeah, so after the meeting, if you make contact with, sorry, yeah.
Sorry, Chair, this is response to Councillor Fittock's point, not to Councillor Stamp's point. Yes. So, but if that's okay, I think Councillor Fittock's correct. There is a difference between the way that we might do things commercially and the way that we do things in public sector, local government, etc. And do note, bottom of page 185, there is something in there around programme reporting and benefit realisation. And in part of my role, I would expect to see clear measurables that were about benefit. So it might not be that there's a clear impact into increased income or reduced expenditure, for example. There could well be a degree of recycling of costs, but I would be expecting that the project work that the PMO sees through did have a clear, tangible benefit that's being derived for residents in some measurable manner. So it's different, but not completely different. I suppose that's what I'm saying. Thank you.
Okay, any other issues, members? In which case, no, in which case we'll go to well, I think there's a concern. Let's go to a vote then in that case. Those in favour of the recommendations, put your hands up. That's everyone. Okay, that's unanimous vote. Good, thank you very much. We move on then. Agenda item 7, lease extension and consolidation of Unit 2 Springfield Industrial Estate, Burnham-on-Crouch. Pages can be found on pages 187 to 188. And Mr. Spring, I think you are taking us through this, so over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This is a report that requests a lease extension for Unit 2 Springfield Industrial Estate to consolidate 3 existing leases that we have. Unit 2, Unit 2A and additional land at Springfield Industrial Estate into one formal lease. The council owns Springfield Industrial Estate in Burnham-on-Crouch, and the council has 3 separate leases for those units at the moment, and the adjoining area called Additional Yard. So they're the 3 leases that we've got currently. The council has requested from the leaseholder, or it's had a request from the leaseholder, which is SBA Investments, for the 3 current leases, asking them to be combined into one lease for a term of 90 years. The tenant does have an automatic right to renew their agreement when they expire, and by granting the lease allows the term to be aligned and reduces the administration burden, as well as one agreement will be monitored easier, rent will be paid, and reviews carried out more simply if it's one lease. Members did agree a similar extension request at Strategy and Resources Committee back in October of last year, and officers were granted delegated authority for approval for leases over 40 years, but one of these leases less than 40 years, but one of these leases is over 40 years, so it doesn't apply in this case. If Strategy and Resources agree for this request, office will recommend that a new valuation is carried out to combine the area to allow a new agreement to begin and to take into consideration a new or current market value. Businesses obviously do require a long-term security for their premises, and in order to invest in their business and make a long-term investment and growth plans. We anticipate that the current leases that have been entered with the same sort of period of time to the council, we'll expect some more of those coming through as the coming months go past. So the recommendation for members tonight is that the council agrees a new lease for the combined units of 2 Springfield Industrial Estate for the term of 90 years. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much. So the recommendation, which you've just heard, but I will read it out once more, can be found on page 187, that the council agrees for a new lease for Unit 2 Springfield Industrial Estate for a term of 90 years. I so move. Do I have a second? Councillor Thompson. Yes, thank you. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
No, it's all right.
I was trying to. Some people catch my eye, and others not so much so. Okay. So proposed and second. Members, any questions? Councillor Stamp.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really pleased about this. I think it safeguards the industrial space. We don't have a lot in Burnham-on-Crouch. It seems to be very tricky to get businesses to come out that far because of, we know, the restrictions of the roads, the highways, etc. So I absolutely welcome it. You've said that you're going to do a new evaluation. That's not going to put the rent up, so it's going to be impossible for them to continue, is it?
No, I wouldn't have thought so, Councillor. I've got Chrissy online who might be able to interject with that, but I think it's just a case of, again, a new market value for that term. Chrissy, you got anything else to add to that?
Hello there. Sorry. So we are still seeking for it to be valued, but again, we're not sure on what the valuation would be, but obviously that would be something maybe would, obviously being both myself, probably potentially Emma getting legal involved to see what the valuation would be. I can't say for certain what it would be at this stage.
Councillor Stamp.
Yeah, can we have reassurance it's not going to be then ridiculously high for the second part of the term, the extension of the term, because we wouldn't really want to sort of price people out. I've sat at many of these meetings where they've been kept on a level playing field, which is hopefully what Emma's going to say, because we've dealt with leases on numerous occasions at this committee. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Stamp. Yeah, with regards to rent, obviously we look to get a market rent, and that's what the delegations apply in terms of getting best value for money. If we receive that rent and it is an extortionately higher amount, there's some negotiation around that, because a market rent evaluation is only their best estimate, and if there aren't people willing to pay that, it's not a correct one. If the leaseholder is suggesting a sum significantly less, we will speak to the valuer, hear their arguments and see if our valuer can agree with the arguments they're making. If not, then we would have to, as officers, we don't have the delegation to agree a lease under the market value. We would bring it back to committee for them to take a decision if we were going to be offering something under a market value. So in that sense, if it is high, if our valuer and the leaseholder can't agree, because the valuer will look at alternative leases of a similar nature, and so there is a debate. It's an art, not a science, so we will have that debate. But if we feel that actually we want to go beneath that valuation to keep a business in place, we will bring that decision back to committee to make it.
Can I have reassurance that it comes back to the committee if that's the case, please?
Yes, it would. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, from the chair, just double check on this 90 years. That is a standard lease length for this type of.
For that site, yes.
For that site, that's fine. That's good.
No.
Well, standard.
For
it
a
is
business lease, and
indeed
compared to the others on that site. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Fine.
We'll be there waiting for it to end.
Well, we will, won't we? Yeah. Exactly. Anyway, there we go. So we've had it proposed, seconded, and so. Can we agree by assent? Yeah. Agreed. Thank you very much. Okay, we move on then. Agenda item 8, budget monitoring report, quarter 9. This can be found on pages 189 to 202. Mr. Jay, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. The committee will be aware that period 8 came to the last meeting in support of the budget papers, as it gave a helpful indication as to how the budget papers link back to the current financial year's performance. Period 9 follows on quickly from that, but obviously period 9, it's the quarter 3 and the standard report coming back to the committee. The recommendations are set out at 2. I'll just take the committee quickly through the key aspects of the report. We're still seeing that the operational budgets are very much reflecting the plans that were set about 12 months ago as part of the budget process for 25-26. In the paragraphs following 3.3, there's a note around some of this the particular areas of activity. We've seen high incomes through planning and also through car parks. It's worth just noting that in planning, there's kind of 3 income streams, if you like, in particular through planning: pre-planning applications, minor applications, and major applications. Minors and pre-planning advice tend to be more stable and less volatile, and just out of their nature, major planning applications are a little bit more volatile. You tend to get fewer of them coming through, and when they do, they're larger numbers. And largely the position in planning and the increased income is to do with major planning applications. So the change from the current year's performance into next year's performance is appropriate. We're not budgeting for lots and lots of major planning application incomes. We are expecting that some of the trends we're seeing in the current year around minors and pre-planning advice will be continuing into next year. In terms of the car parks, what we're seeing in particular is where I think that the change was made to allow all-day parking at a slightly cheaper rate, particularly around Prom Park. So that was a shift in the tariff. That's led to an increase in the volume. And as a result, when you do the multiplication, we're doing better overall. So that tactic has worked effectively. Members might recall that in the proposals for next year's budget, some fees for some car parks are proposed to be frozen. The estimated cost on a like-for-like basis is about 19,000 in next year. Based on the results from the current year, it seemed to suggest that actually we could well make that back quite quickly through the volume of tickets being issued. And that's the proper tickets, not the fixed penalty notice tickets. So through that process, I think what we've seen is that actually some of that tactic around how to set the tariff can help to drive higher volumes, and as a result, better overall results for the council. So hopefully some useful background there. I think the key point is then picked up in 334, which sets out that because of those improved areas of income, the planned use of 572k from general reserves, which was previously agreed as part of setting the budget back in February 25, that's no longer required. So that's a better position from the reserve side. We're not needing to use that to support the budget delivery because we've been able to support that instead through the income overachievement that we've seen in those areas that I've just described. Moving on, capital is also progressing well at present, and there's some further detail as we saw at period 8 where we're identifying the completed schemes that are coming through. We're now very much into the hurly-burly of the last few weeks of the financial year. Again, what we're trying to do is to make sure that the outturn position against the schemes is reflected quickly and in a timely way back to councillors, and that will be wrapped up in the outturn report, which will follow in probably around about June to come back to this committee. We may see that there's some change in the profile of spend for capital schemes between the current year and next year. The actual overall cost of the schemes is expected to stay the same, but the incidence of cost between the years can be quite tricky, because particularly at the year end, it's not entirely clear sometimes whether a cost will count into the old year or into the new year. The scheme itself will continue, nothing else changes. It's just an accounting issue that we'll be reporting through in terms of that outturn position as and when that comes through. That's particularly clear in the larger projects, which are shown at 3.6 and 3.61, particularly around the leisure centre facilities. Just for clarity on that one, there is a big variation in the possible level of the outturn. Rather than ask some of my hard-pressed accountancy colleagues to try and come up with a sensible way of calculating this, we're using the scheme quantity surveyor to help advise from an independent perspective, just to make that process a little bit easier. And lastly, around general fund creditors and debtors, 371 shows that actually we pay our suppliers pretty quickly. The payments are done very rapidly once the approval for individual invoices has been made. We're often hitting, as you can see from the chart there, 98, 99, 100% paid within 30 days. That was the old best value performance indicator. Some of you might recall the level of payments achieved within 30 days. That was, with councils across the country significantly stepped back from that as part of COVID. And there was a recognition that actually the cash flow for councils was less important in a way than the cash flow for local suppliers. So what we did was to reduce our payment terms from, it could be 14 days or 28 days or something like that. We just paid straight away. So we're continuing to do that. We do have that data. It doesn't tend to change an awful lot. But I suppose the important point for councillors in the committee is to understand that actually we tend not to make any delay. There's no point in us, there's no real benefit to us in making a delay as soon as a payment is due to a local supplier, they're usually local suppliers, we make the payment. It just seems to be the best way to do it. That also has an economic benefit locally as well. 372 picks up, rather than the payments out, it's the payments in, the debt side of things. And what you can see there, similar to the way it was worked through at the end of period 8. Overall, the general fund debt position at the end of December, 615,000, of which not overdue was 368,000, overdue was 247,000. Within that, the area that I'm more interested in is the 55 days plus. And within that 55 days plus, what you can see is 88,000 has been passed to debt collectors, debt collection agencies to act on our behalf around those debts. Payment plans are in place for 44,000 of that. Legal action is in hand around 22,000 of that. Between the end of December and the preparation of the report, 30,000 have been paid. So this is all moving. It's all quite volatile, but hopefully what councillors will may be able to take from that, certainly my understanding of this, where there is that 182,000 which is being actively pursued, there are clear plans in place for each of those debts, and we're driving that through. Any level of write-off at the end of that process arises because we've exhausted all of those avenues. It does come through occasionally. A local firm will be in receivership or have become bankrupt, and therefore there's no way that we're going to be able to recover that debt. That's usually the point that we get to, and that's where we could end up in a situation of writing the debt off. All of which is the report for period 9. I'm happy to leave it there with the recommendations as set out in section 2, Chair. Happy to take questions from the committee as appropriate.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. J. So the recommendations can be found on page 189, section 2. I'll read these out. That the committee, little 1, notes that the forecast revenue expenditure outturn as at the 31st of December 2025 is 20k over budget against the net service budget of 14.114 million. Also, that the improved income position in a number of areas means that use of general reserves can be avoided. Further information can be found at section 3 in appendix 1, along with the reasons for significant variances. Little 2 notes the forecast capital expenditure outturn as at the 31st of December 2025, which is for a total capital programme delivery of 5.65 million against revised budget of 6.98 million. And the details of schemes completed in the year so far, paragraph 3.3.4. Further information can be found in appendix 2, along with reasons for, again, significant variances. Little 3 approves the movement in earmarked reserves set out in appendix 3, and little 4 notes the revenue budget reconciliation between the opening and current budget in appendix 4. I so move. Do I have a second? Thank you very much. Yeah. So we members, any questions? Thank you. Councillor.
Yeah, a couple of questions, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. J. It's yes, it's a pretty good picture, isn't it? I think at the end of the day, clearly there's concerns over the debt. You know, we all know how hard it is for a lot of people and a lot of companies, and particularly in the hospitality businesses at the moment. Where we on that 88,000, if we've got debt collectors involved, where does the cost of that go, or do we pay a percentage? So we're not going to get the full debt back, are we, in effect?
So where the 88,000 is appropriate to be passed to debt collectors, we pass, or where it's appropriate to pass a debt to a debt collector, we pass it across. The current position is 88,000, as it says, as you've referred to. It varies. The general level of collection that we see is somewhere between about 40 and 60% against that, but it can vary depending on the nature of the debt concerned. And the cost of that is taken out of the collected amounts by the bailiffs as they approach that. So no, we won't get the full amount back, but if you see that as a you know, the likely amount, say, is around 50% that we'll see. So we could lose, say, 44,000 against that. That's in the context of the total debt, that position of being 616,000. So it's a tolerable amount. There is a necessary business concern around that. The work that me and the team consistently try to do is to make sure that we're not excluding local businesses and local suppliers more than necessary, but actually we are also trying to collect debt in a timely way, because if you don't collect in a timely way, that's a problem for the business as well. But there will be some problems within that. We try to minimise those as much as possible.
I mean, before your time, this committee was constantly having to agree write-offs, which got to be, we accept the fact that sometimes it's impossible to collect, but fingers crossed on those. My second question, I think you're involved in the finance officers group discussing the costs of LGR. Have we got contingency in our budget for that? Because I believe the costs are a bit, I think it's in excess of £100 million, isn't it? And I agree that I believe there is going to be a sharing around the authorities. So have we got a contingency for our share?
We have got contingency, and that was set up, if you recall, at the end of 24-25. So the outturn report that was brought back here included the setting up of a contingency for LGR, and some of that you can see is actually, if you look at page 200, there's costs associated with local government reorganisation balance at the start of the year of £500,000. We've used 30,000 of that. There's 470,000 on hand. There's also provision within the budget papers for 26-27 against topping up that earmark reserve against that. So I'm comfortable that we are probably over providing for Maldon's share at this point, and if there are costs which will transpire and which are properly accounted for within the current financial year, they will be met by a drawdown from the reserves as appropriate. So I'm comfortable with that position. I have seen similar numbers being discussed, but obviously, if you like, we are quite a small partner within an overall picture.
Fortunately, yes.
Yeah, so I doubt that there will be a very big bill coming towards Maldon in that respect, but I know that the finance officers are going through that process at the moment, and I'm expecting that those bills will be issued in due course, and I can draw that out in the outturn report when we get there to share clearly with the committee what those costs are that we've incurred.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. James.
Yes, well, I think that's helpful, that we're not going to suddenly be surprised, are we? Which is what we certainly wouldn't want. Yeah. Councillor Fittock.
Thank you, Chair. I mean, Mr. Jack, for you, Chair, in terms of the debts that may not be recoverable, one of the problems we have is they seem to sit there for a very long time before we determine we're going to write them off. Do we have a sort of time frame that we, if they're deemed to be irrecoverable, that we're going to say, look, they're irrecoverable, let's get them off the books, or just drag on?
Mr. J.
I'm happy to bring back further detail to the committee in due course if that would be appropriate. The basic approach that we take is we will keep working at debt until it becomes absolutely clear that it's not possible to recover it. And I tend to, as low value write-offs come forward within my own delegations, I'm able to approve or disapprove those. I tend to look into the detail of what's going on. Yes, some of those have been pursued for some time. What we sometimes find is that an individual can't be traced for a while. We tend to use PAYE, NI type information. That's a fairly standard approach to it. You might not be able to find somebody for a while, then they crop back up in the system. It's possible then to reopen the book on a debt which previously it felt was difficult to recover. Alternatively, and some I've seen recently have been around a local firm being declared bankrupt. It was a small firm. Well, it's quite clear that it's not going to be able. So some will come forward for write-off quite quickly, but depending on the circumstances, some of those we might think there is the opportunity that we don't want to write them off straight away. We can give it a bit longer to do that. We don't have a time frame around the end point for that write-off. We tend to try to pursue for as long as possible. It's public money, it seems appropriate to do that. So it's more to do with the nature of the case rather than there being a specific process that we follow.
You want to come back?
I understand it. Yeah, I mean, that being the case, and I'm not aware there might be, but I don't see any reports coming back saying who've got outstanding debt that's 2 years old, for example, so that we can actually gauge the fact that we're still chasing debt that is highly unlikely to be recovered, but we keep trying to recover it for a very long period of time. So, I mean, the age debt sort of is a bit unclear then in terms of the time frame, isn't it?
Mr. Jay?
Happy to pick that up and to look at what data we have available and how that might answer the question. And I think perhaps in the background of your question was also a point around, are we sometimes in the case of pursuing a debt and it's costing us to pursue the debt, and would it be easier just to go, well, let's, again, I'm happy to come back to the committee with something that might be useful to do as part of the outturn report, looking at the debt across the course of the year, the debt brought into the year, the debt at the end of the year, and actually if there's an opportunity to save officer time with members' agreement by saying actually some of these we could draw to a close earlier, I'm sure officers would be very happy to take that recommendation from councillors if councillors were minded to approve that. So we could bring that sort of detail back if that'd be helpful.
That would. I think we have had some discussion around this at the Financial Working Group, but I think that actually a little bit more clarity along the lines of what Councillor Fittick is suggesting would be helpful to bring back to this committee. Okay. Any other counts?
Yeah. Thank you. Just to maybe give a little bit of information. I could get this wrong, obviously, but I don't know if it was Emma, but Sue Green did a presentation to SNR when I was on the committee regarding this very subject about age debt and how long it takes to recover the costs and whether it's worth it, and also the reputation to the actual council if we're seen to be turfing somebody out, in difficult circumstances. So what the only reason I'm saying is so you don't go away and waste a lot of time when that knowledge is around, because to me that your time is very important, and we've debated this on a number of occasions. So I don't know if it was Emma who sat there last time when Sue Green was saying, you've maybe forgotten, but we did iron this out before about what level it was going to be done. It's up to you, but I just thought I'd help there.
I think, sorry, just before you come back, Mr. I mean, I think that's helpful. I think, we're not looking for some lengthy report for a lot of work to be done, but actually, if we can touch on the comment that Councillor Fittick made, using what Ms Green has already produced, actually it wouldn't be a great deal of work. But over to you, Mr. Chair.
I think it's a helpful prompt. I have had a conversation with Sue about exactly that, what would seem logical under the circumstances, perhaps to use the framework that she developed and just update that for the current financial year, to provide an update on that position for the committee and to bring that back as part of the outturn. So,
and finally, can I just say these debts are a lot smaller than the ones that usually come to this committee.
Yeah. Indeed. Okay, so actually, any other comments? No. Well, can we agree? Oh, well, I think it's a finance, so we better vote. Can those in favour, please? Unanimous. Okay, that's great. Thank you very much. So we move on then to agenda item 9. Any other items of business that the chair decides are urgent? You'll be glad to know there are none. So we move on to agenda item 10, which is the closure of the meeting. So at 8:08, I declare the meeting closed.